Hello and welcome to the We Love Hitchin Interviews 2024. My name is Matt Porter and I'm here as the founder of the Facebook group We Love Hitchin, which is a vibrant community space for the past 9 years with almost 30,000 members. We are thrilled to be hosting today's event at the Block Hitchin. A big shout out goes to Amanda and all the guys here for their generous support providing an amazing space for our interview. The Block Community Hub is an alternative education provision run by a community interest group in Hitchin Town Centre. The main aim of the hub is to support vocational activities for young people who may be at risk of exclusion or exploitation in the community. They use their resources to create additional income, with all profits going towards supporting their work with young people. Visit theblockhitchin.org for more information. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll be speaking to candidates running for the Hitchin constituency in the upcoming general election, where we hope to learn more about their platforms, visions for their communities, and plans to address the key issues that matter most to us. Many of the questions asked today have been drawn from the recent ONS survey of the key things people most worry about in this country. So let's get started. Joining me today is Alistair Strather, representing Labour. Welcome, Alistair.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for being here. Let's start by getting to know a little bit more about you. So could you tell us about your background and what motivated you to run for this election?
Sure, absolutely. I think it'd be fair to say that this time last year, I certainly wasn't expecting to be sitting here as a candidate for the general election, but for a lot of reasons, it felt like the right time to put myself forward. I've always tried to do jobs that I find rewarding with a sense of public service at their heart. After leaving university, I was a maths teacher for a number of years in Essex, before then going to work at the Bank of England, where I did a whole range of jobs, from sticking up to banks around financial regulation, to really focusing on working with big insurance firms about how they can do their bit to help tackle climate change too. Last year though, something quite historic happened. I wasn't really expecting to do anything more than carry on loving my job and carrying on doing things that I was really enjoying. But Nadine Dorris had slightly other ideas. And when she announced that she was resigning, having grown up in Bedfordshire, having spent all of my childhood into my early 20s living in Bedfordshire, it felt like a moment where I could maybe step up and do my bit, because I love our area. I love this part of the world, but for my friends, for my family around it just feels like too many things aren't working at the moment. And when Nadine stood down and when there was that historic by-election opportunity, having been someone who's always been interested in politics, always wanted to do my bit to try and make our community better, it felt like a moment where I had to step up and be counted. I didn't stand into that expecting to necessarily win, but thankfully, over the course of a slightly longer, I think it'd be fair to say, by-election campaign than any of us were expecting, we were able to earn the trust of communities that had never put their faith in Labour before and do something truly historic. Since then, for the last 7 months, we've been really focusing on just getting things done. Now, not being in government, that's been a real focus on getting things done locally, whether it's more investment into GPs or tackling some of the real local issues around roads, infrastructure and wider concerns. But I've loved every minute of it, and I'm hoping at this election to be able to earn people's trust to keep going.
Thank you very much for sharing that, and it's great to have you here again. Let's delve into some of the key issues that our community and the country are facing at the moment. So we're going to do it in a set of questions really, but they all stem really from the ONS data. So the first one, the most important thing people are concerned about at the moment, is cost of living crisis. Many families in Hitchin are struggling with the rising cost of living. Food prices seem to be rising at alarming rates, whilst we are being told inflation is under control. What specific measures would you propose to help alleviate these financial pressures?
I think that's one of the most important questions actually facing people across this election, because I think while some people look in from the outside have this idea of Hitchin, Hertfordshire, Bedfordshire as an affluent place where people wouldn't be hit by the cost of living pressures, actually every single family I've spoken to, every single person has been touched by it in some ways. And actually, quite strikingly, but a couple of months back, I was visiting the Need Project, a really big and active food bank based in Stockwell, but operating right across central Bedfordshire into Hertfordshire. And heartbreakingly, they've been having some of their busiest months yet. So despite all the narratives you might hear from politicians sometimes about things getting better, things being under control, they were seeing the exact opposite. And that's pretty much the picture I've been seeing when out and about too. I think first and foremost, it's got to be providing the economic stability we need to get prices back under control. Not making big unfunded spending commitments, not making, not trying to pretend to people that policy gimmicks are going to be the be all and end all that will solve everything overnight, but actually for the first time in a long time, providing stability, providing direction and providing economic competence. That means we'll get to a point where inflation genuinely is under control and people can start to see those cost of living pressures easing. Alongside that, we've got to do some really targeted things to help people too. So I'm really glad that Labour's investing in its own GB Energy company to help drive down energy bills, potentially up to hundreds of pounds for each family. So I think some of our other measures around free breakfast provision at primary school age, both to provide that support and almost a childcare offer to start the day, but also taking that little bit off the financial burden in terms of breakfast provision for that family that day is important too. But there's a whole host of things we're going to need to do to solve the longer term problems around affordable housing, around better paid work, and around economic stability that I think it's going to take a number of years of leadership to ensure we get right.
And how do you plan to fund these initiatives without increasing the burden on the taxpayer?
That's a really important question, but I think while there's so many things that just aren't working for people at the moment, the tax burden is also, after 14 years of Conservative government, at record highs. Now, COVID absolutely played its bit with it, but actually pretty spectacular economic mismanagement from Liz Truss and pretty much every chancellor since has underlined the need for change, which is why I'm really glad they've been very clear that any tax rises we do have will be very focused. So, for example, some of those commitments around the NHS funding we'd like to deliver, we're going to have tighter clamp down on the loopholes that non-dom citizens currently benefit from, so that if they're working here, they're paying their taxes here, and we'll use the billions that brings in to fund our NHS better. Alongside that, for GB Energy, that energy transition point, we have a proper oil and gas windfall tax. We won't allow them to continue to make record profits off the back of bill payers, and we'll invest that money in the clean, cheap, renewable technology that we know won't just get bills down for people, it will also provide energy security for this country.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We'll move on to question number 2, which is the second most important item which 85% of people are concerned about, which is NHS and healthcare. With 85% of people concerned about the NHS, what are your plans to improve the services, reduce waiting times and address staffing shortages?
Another big, I think, challenge at the moment is the just shocking state that healthcare provision is at in this country at pretty much every level, whether it's the impossible challenge that is finding an NHS dentist these days, whether it's the long hospital waiting times that we'll pretty much all know someone who's currently suffering from, or whether it's a simple daily challenge of trying to get a doctor's appointment right across the area. It's a real issue. I think there are things locally we can do better, which is why as a local MP I've been working really hard to try and improve investment in GP surgeries and boost capacity, both in Sheffield where I live, but also in neighbouring towns and villages like Arlesey and Stockton too. That can bear fruit, but it's not going to be anywhere near enough. So we need national change too. That's why Labour have said one of our big priorities, our big missions of a Labour government will be getting the NHS back on track. We've done it before and we've got a plan to do it again this time. We'll be investing in 40,000 extra appointments a week to start easing the burden on patients and easing those long waiting times. It won't dramatically change things overnight, but it will start the hard work of getting those waiting times back to manageable levels and getting people to a point where they can be seen in a timely way. Alongside that, we've got to be training the doctors, dentists and nurses we need in this country and incentivising them to work more in primary care so that people can see that doctor at the earliest point of need and not end up in a position where they're bounced into going to a hospital later down the line when doubtless the need is greater and the cost of dealing with it much higher.
So I think you've actually answered the challenge question, so I won't. It's all about being able to sustain it long term.
Absolutely, and that's why I think it can't just be about short-term solutions. We've got to get that over time to get the waiting times down in the short term, but longer term we've got to build up the workforce through training more doctors, dentists and nurses in the UK. We've got to push more of them into primary care, so we've got more provision at the earliest point of need. We've got to have better links with adult social care, so that we're finally cracking that link between care and the NHS for too long has been broken. And finally, we've got to make better use of technology and reform too. It's not always going to be the case that more money is the solution. There are things we can do to treat people more efficiently and to use technology and some of the advances in diagnostic scanning technology in particular to ensure people's needs are being identified much earlier and dealt with much quicker.
Thank you very much. We go to item 3, which is the economy.
Oh, yes.
The broader economic situation is a concern for 68% of the population. What strategies do you have to address inflation? Unemployment or employment is kind of a muddy thing because there's jobs, but there's not people that want
Oh,
to do
yes.
them and things like that, I guess. But an economic stability, which is the most important thing, is having stability.
And I think first and foremost, that has to start with stability in government, to be honest. We've cycled through 5 different prime ministers in quick succession and an even larger number of economic strategies than that. It is impossible to create an environment that's conducive to growth, that's conducive to businesses, to international investors leading into the UK economy, if you keep chopping and changing your leadership and you keep chopping and changing your direction. When I was working at the Bank of England, I spoke to some of the biggest insurance firms in the UK who would love to put more money behind the green transition, would love to invest in things that will create jobs, growth, and economic security for our country. But they're not going to do it against the backdrop of a government chopping and changing when targets are going to take effect and seemingly changing day to day, whether they see it as a real issue or something they just want to talk culture wars about. So stability, first and foremost, is going to be important.
Okay.
And then I think alongside that, leaning into the areas where we know as a country we've got an advantage, but historically we've not always had the industrial strategy to make it happen. Part of that is that green transition story we've already touched on and leading into our big natural assets and big technology assets. Part of that is supporting our life sciences sector, our technology sectors to make the most of the fantastic innovation happening in this UK, but to drive and harness it to create jobs here too. And part of that is challenging, ourselves to be more ambitious in addressing the skills gap too. I think for too long sometimes we've depended on immigration or overseas labour to take jobs that people here in the UK would love to be able to do, but aren't always supported with the right skills and support to be able to take on. We've got to put that right, and I'm glad that Labour's got an ambition and a plan to do that.
Good, thank you. Right, question 4, which is climate change and the environment. So 61% of people are concerned with the environment and climate change. With growing awareness and concerns about climate change, what measures do you propose to promote environmental stability within the Hitchin area, within the constituency?
That's so important. Climate change and the environment more generally is a big issue for me. Having grown up in the countryside, I'm so proud of what makes this area special. But alongside that, for the last few years, my real work, my activism, my involvement in politics has had a commitment to protecting the environment at its core too. At the Bank of England, a lot of work I did was specifically on working with large insurance firms around climate change, but outside of that too, I've supported campaigns on everything from reducing plastic pollution to protecting parts of our fantastic countryside. Labour, I think, has got a clear vision to do 2 things. One, finally end the climate denialism that this government feels like it's slid into and focus on ambitious goals to tackle climate change. Meeting that clean power by 2030 target is going to be a stretch, but if we do it, not only will it mean make sure we're meeting our climate commitments, but it's a huge opportunity to drive bills down and drive growth up right across the country. Alongside that, I'm really proud that we've got ambitious commitments around nature too. Much tougher penalties for water companies that are polluting our rivers, much stronger incentives in a reformed system to help support farmers look after our countryside, and a whole host of other measures to make sure we're doing everything we can, not just to tackle climate change, but to protect our fantastic countryside and look after the amazing nature and biodiversity that at its best should make this place a really special place to live.
Yeah. Okay, question 5, crime. 59% of people are concerned about crime. It remains a major concern for many people. What are your plans to improve personal safety and effectiveness of law enforcement in our community?
I think, again, that's a really important question for lots of people. We've seen some shocking drop-offs in the number of crimes that are being solved, caught and prosecuted over the last 10 years. And I think that's bled into a sense right across our towns and villages that people don't always feel safe out and about across our high streets and about our communities. First and foremost, I think part of the solution has to be police presence. We've got to get back to a model of neighbourhood policing that means people feel that they've got a named officer that they know and a relatable police presence day to day in their community. Won't happen overnight, but Labour's got a fully costed and funded plan to recruit 13,000 more neighbourhood police officers. Now, they won't all be here in Hitchin and probably be a little spooky if they were, but it will mean we start to build back that connection between the police force and the community it serves, and that slightly more present police relationship that I think is going to be so important, not just as a deterrent, but ensuring police officers have the relationships they need with their communities to help tackle and prioritise when solving crime too.
Thank you. I'll move swiftly on to question 6, which is housing. Housing affordability and availability are significant issues. What measures will you take to address the housing crisis, particularly for younger people and those on lower incomes?
This is so important, and it's why I'm glad that Labour's got by far the most ambitious offer when it comes to home ownership and home affordability compared to any of the other parties. Not only have we got a clear vision to build many more homes in this country and to do it in a way through urban intensification and new towns that will ease the burden of development on some of our towns and villages, but we've got affordability and access for young people in particular at its heart too. We've got a commitment that where developments are coming forward, local people will have first dibs on being able to buy those properties so they can't be outsourced to overseas investments. We announced just today a guaranteed freedom to buy scheme that will ensure people can buy homes with a 5% deposit again, bringing more homes in reach of more young people. And we've also got real policies to drive up the affordability share of development so that where we are building new homes, many more of them will be in reach of people living in that area, and many more of them will be in reach of young people who I think for far too long now have had to give up on the idea of buying a home at the same time as previous generations.
Excellent. Taking us on to 7, which is roads. What will you do to improve the appalling state of our roads, where in particular potholes are a hazard to drivers and pedestrians?
Oh, absolutely. I think every local MP should be beating the drum down at their council to ensure that every penny of money available for road resurfacing has been delivered in an efficient way. I think the frustrating thing for lots of people across our towns and villages at the moment is, even while they understand the pressures that councils are under, that mean budgets don't always go as far as they should, it doesn't feel like every penny is being spent wisely. Shoddy patchwork, repeated resurfacing of certain roads while others are completely neglected, and some just seeming to have fallen off the radar completely are repeated issues that have been raised with me. So on a local level, it's about working much more robustly with councils to ensure roads are prioritised sensibly and delivered efficiently. Alongside that, I think there's a particularly dogged issue on some areas around here around estate and road adoption too. One of the big bugbears for me in some of the towns and villages I used to represent in Mid-Bedfordshire is the issue of private roads being left to fall into complete ruin while the council steps back and refuses to take responsibility. We've got to have a clear plan of action to ensure roads can't fall into this estate adoption limbo that enables roads like Old Bridge Way, say, and Shepherd to become pretty much obstacle courses rather than roads after a certain period of time. We've got to have that clear line of responsibility to the landowner or the council, and we've got to have a properly resourced council able to then go out and get the roads resurfaced.
Excellent. Right, so we have some community questions as well from our marvellous We Love Hitchin community. Andrea, a member of the community, thank you Andrea, has asked, how would you vote if a motion was raised in Parliament to bring water companies back into the public sector and stop taking profits from this essential resource?
Well, Andrea, thank you for your question. I think this is a really shocking example actually of where it feels we've just let things slide for far too long. We've got to the point where we are seeing sewage pumped into our rivers, our lakes, our beaches. We're still paying through the nose in our water bills. And actually alongside that, and often underreported, we're seeing our water supply go down, not up. The number of reservoirs, despite all the houses that have been built, has been falling over the last few years. And there's another big issue when it comes to water supply that we need to tackle and any future government is going to need to get a grip on. In terms of the way forward, we have to, I think, recognise the situation we inherit. In an ideal world, I can absolutely understand the rationale that actually public ownership of water is what's the norm in every other major European country and feels like a way to deliver the most efficient running of the water utilities. But to do that would cost, by most estimates, about £56 billion. That would be £56 billion of taxpayers' money going to shareholders who've already been exploiting the system without spending a penny fixing the shocking state of affairs we've been inheriting. So I think my urgent priority now wouldn't be bailing out private shareholders. It would be about forcing them to clean up the mess they've made. Yeah. So criminal penalties for water bosses, sanctions on limiting bonuses and dividends until this issue's been solved, a much tougher regulation of water companies more generally to ensure they're focused on the job they should be doing, cleaning up their mess and supplying us with water and not extracting wealth for their shareholders.
Thank you very much. Martin, thank you Martin, has asked AI, should we be worried and how should it be kept safe?
I think people have got really good reason at the moment to be concerned and disconcerted about the possible impact of AI on our day-to-day lives, from deep fakes to the extent of automation it could bring, there's huge challenges, I think, to getting it right. It's also, I think, a huge opportunity for Britain. We've long had fantastic research in this area, fantastic scientists in this area, fantastic technology and innovators. But we need to get the regulatory framework right to give people confidence and to be a world leader, I think, in not just delivering AI, but delivering AI safely and in a way that really captures benefits for people right across the country. For a really long time now, the government has been talking about the need to bring in an AI strategy, but it's been stalling and stalling and stalling. Labour have said that would be an urgent priority on day one to make sure we're getting the regulation of these things right, to make sure we're giving people confidence that AI is going to have a positive impact in their life and isn't something they have to be concerned about, and to actually ensure that the benefits that AI brings are being distributed to all of us and not just hoarded by those who are sitting on top of patents for some of the assets.
I think that with regards to this type of technology, it's extremely important to move quickly because the technology is moving quicker than the generally government does. Right. And in this case, it's got to be addressed quite quickly.
Agreed.
But I will move on to the next question because I know that we're short of time. So Nyland and Lauren have asked similar questions. Should we be providing arms or assistance in the Gaza war? And should we be recognising Palestine as an independent state?
Really important question. I think one that lots of people have asked me in a variety of ways over the last few months. The scenes in Israel and Gaza since October have been the most horrific thing that I've had to witness day by day as an MP. And having met with families of those who've lost their lives in Palestine and families of those who've been taken as hostages, it is just so heartbreaking that as a world we have let this situation get to this point and then develop and play out in the way it has. No one can say that we've done enough because we clearly haven't, because the heartbreaking challenges are still going on and the heartbreaking scenes are taking place daily. On the specific questions, I think yes, the time has come to recognise Palestine as a state. I think we need to move past that so we can have a much more robust conversation with Israel about how we facilitate secure statehood for both Israel and Palestine. But absolutely, I think recognising Palestinian statehood probably has to be part of that now. I think alongside that, for me, we've got to be tough allies, and that cannot mean facilitating arms that are being used for the horrific invasion in Rafah. I'm really glad that Labour has come out and been very clear that we need to review our arms licences to Israel in light of that. I think it's important too that the government publishes the legal advice it's receiving so that we can all understand the current intelligence they've been being given. But alongside that too, I think it highlights the need for a complete review of our approach to arms sales so that people across this country can have confidence in the system again. We need a review of that process, and I think that's got to be a priority for Labour government. In terms of supplies, I think the main thing we need to be doing even more on is aid. It's really clear not enough aid is getting in to Gaza at the moment. Part of that, I think, is to do with the pretty mendacious way Israel has ran some of the checkpoints, but part of that too has to be down to the UK government doing more to get aid into that situation and supporting the fantastic work of agencies that are working on the ground.
Right, Vanessa and Nicola have asked similar questions again, and which are quite close to my own heart, actually, as a parent with special needs children. Currently, children with special needs are being failed. There is not enough provision or indeed funding necessary to ensure SEND families get the support they need, not only in education, such as lack of space or appropriate pupil to carer ratios, but also in social care and the availability of agency staff, or even respite for parents who are exhausted and alone, and in many cases completely. What can you pledge today that will provide support and hope for many of these people in these cases, which are desperate families and carers of those most vulnerable in our society, people without a voice of their own who rely on their representatives in Parliament to speak for them?
Too right. It is devastatingly heartbreaking, the place in which SEND education has been allowed to get to. And we're failing children, but also failing their parents, their families, and the schools too, who aren't being set up to be able to support them properly as well. Now, I think there's a local and a national angle to this. Locally, it's about being an ally to families, being a supportive voice and resource through really difficult, obviously quite adversarial conversations with Central Beds Council and the Bedfordshire part of the seat and Hertfordshire County Council and Hertfordshire part of the seat to ensure they're doing better. both of, SEND provision is failing right across the country. But in Hertfordshire and Central Bedfordshire, we have two particularly bad authorities when it comes to SEND provision. So being a passionate and determined advocate on this, drawing upon my experience as someone who's ran SEND departments before and who's worked as a teacher before, to really push both councils to do more, to deliver on their improvement plans, and to get behind parents for a system that can often feel set up to grind them down. Nationally, we have to fix the system so that no one anywhere in the country is being left in that situation. Easier said than done, but there are a few things that I think have to be at its heart. One, breaking down the current system that sets up parents, schools and councils as adversaries and in silos who often have to fight to get what's right for the child, and move towards a system where resources are set up to naturally coalesce around the young person, their need, and what's needed to support them in that setting. Now, some of that may be financial, but a big part of that is skills-based too, and making sure that teachers and mainstream teachers in particular have got the training they need to support young people with additional needs, making sure we're recognising the big workforce gaps, stopping EHCP assessments from being carried out in a timely fashion, and providing the big investment we know we're going to need to make sure we get that back on track. And rethinking too how we best support counties and we best support authorities to provide specialist provision. The lack of specialist provision in Central Bedfordshire, where I used to be an MP, is a big bugbear for me. And so not just fighting them locally, but setting up the whole framework nationally to ensure that gets put right is important. There are, I will admit, some good ideas I think on the government's green paper on this that I hope will be leaning in right behind. But the fact that they put such little money behind it and the fact that it's currently trying to take place over such a long period of time, for me shows they just do not understand the scale of what's happening and the scale to which parents and children are being let down.
It's extremely urgent
yes.
situation. You leave it too long, you've lost those children because they have grown up and then they've moved on to a different provision. So yeah.
Every day you fail a child is a day of education they will never get back.
Yeah.
And those days add up.
Right. Well, thank you. Final part, Alistair. I wonder if you'd like to address our audience and explain to them why they should choose to vote for you on the 4th of July.
Well, look, on the 4th of July, we're going to face a really important choice here in our Hitchin constituency and right across the towns and villages that make it up. It's really clear it's going to be a very close election. Whatever your politics, this is one of those seats where every vote really will make a difference. Some of the polls have it between 1 percentage point either way. And I think for so many reasons, it's really important we use this moment to vote for change. Whether it's long waits to see a doctor, the spiralling cost of living, or the extent to which things just don't really feel like they're working across our towns and villages at the moment, we need to do better. I hope over the 7 months I've been an MP, I've shown those of you I currently represent that I'm someone who'll put our area first, who'll work hard, and who'll always be on the side of our communities, well above party politics. We need someone who's going to be a champion for these issues, not just locally, but in Parliament. And we need a Labour government who's going to get to grip with them too. It's going to be such a close vote though. So whether you're voting Labour for the first time or whether you're lending your vote to me to get me over the line, I hope I can earn your support. Every opinion poll is really clear. It will be myself or the Conservatives who win in this seat. Labour got more votes than any other party in the recent local elections, and more people than not are currently represented by a Labour representative. But it's going to be close. Every vote's going to matter. And if we want that change, we have to vote for it together. So I hope between now and the 4th of July, I can earn your trust, and together we can finally deliver the change we so desperately need to see.
Thank you, Alistair, for sharing your insights with us today. And obviously appreciate your time in such a busy period of Parliament change and everything, and for addressing concerns of the Hitchin residents. To our viewers, thank you for tuning in. More interviews will continue in this series. Once again, a massive thank you to Amanda and all the guys here at the Block Hitchin for providing such a fantastic venue. Remember, your engagement and questions are vital to this process. So please continue to share your thoughts and comments on this post on the Facebook group We Love Hitchin. And remember to keep comments and discussions respectful and courteous. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.